Janagarajan, why don't you begin?
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Good evening, friends. I welcome you all for a very important webinar on understanding the Uttarakhand flood-induced tragedy. The flash flood induced by glacier slide in Uttarakhand state has resulted in many dead, with still over 150 people missing. The Uttarakhand flood has triggered a debate again whether such a big hydropower projects and big dams could be constructed in the fragile Himalayan region. Many environmental experts and those who work on Himalayan ecosystem have termed the so-called developmental activity utterly unsustainable. Many experts also feel that it is unusual to have snow slide in winter. Many also strongly suggest that it is a man-made disaster induced by anthropogenic factors, which repeatedly occurs in Uttarakhand. We had a huge flood in 2013, and then occurred in 2016, and today in 2021, we have a huge tragedy. There are many more unanswered questions cropping up in this particular episode, and we have very eminent speakers today with us who will deliberate on the Uttarakhand flood tragedy. And these unanswered questions can be a real revelation. So I think we have a very good, we expect, hope to have very good deliberations on this issue. And now over to Joy.
Thank you, Janak. And I welcome once again all of you to this important webinar. As Professor Janagarajan has already told you, as we begin, we also remember all those who lost their lives in this tragedy. All the people who lost their homes and belongings and their livelihoods in this, tragedy which took place just a week back. So I would not take much time. We will straight get into the program because we have 7 eminent speakers for the day and the time is really short. So we have requested the speakers to be within about 8 to 10 minutes to make the initial presentation, and I hope they would, put up their points and issues within the time, so that gives us something about 20-25 minutes for question and answers and discussions and getting the other viewpoints in place. So that's the main part of the program. So we have about an hour or so for the various speakers to speak and about 20-25 minutes for discussions. And the organizers have prepared a very preliminary draft statement on this issue, which will be put up at the end of the session, and there will be a link to that. You can go through it, give your suggestions in the next couple of days so that we can finalize that, and that can go out from this webinar as a shared statement on this issue. So once again, welcome. So we have the first 2 speakers who are actually in the scientific world, who are also expert and who have done very pioneering work on glaciers and the type of issues which we are discussing today. So the first speaker is Dr. Uttam Lal. He's a faculty in the Department of Geography, Sikkim University. In fact, he was one of the founding members to set up the department there. And interestingly, he was also the nodal person from the Sikkim University in the university consortium on cryosphere and climate change. But I think that was a 5 or 6 year research program which was supported by DST. And he has also worked on the environmental constraints Western Himalayas. So anyway, it's also put up on the chat box. I would also request all of you to post your questions on the chat box, and also request the speakers, as and when get the time, they can respond to it, or we take it up during the Q&A session and things. Over to Dr. Uttam Lal.
Well, thank you very much, Joy, and welcome everyone. I'm not sure if the slide share is visible to you all.
It is visible. You can put it on the slideshow mode, Dr. Uttam.
Yeah, is it visible?
Yeah, it is. It is.
Okay, great. Well, what I plan to do is I plan to cut down on all technical jargons, and as I understand there is a mixed audience, so I will try to be as general as possible. what happened in Uttarakhand, we have a lot of information flowing in through various channels, be it newspaper, be it our, idiot box. But unfortunately, whenever event of this nature it happens, it takes people by surprise, and we stop at that. And at the very best, we would think that it has happened this section of the Himalaya, and the other section of Himalaya would be possibly it will not get, and if at all it will get this kind of event, it would be quite delayed in time. Unfortunately, what we look at is a scenario which is in the human time scale. Generally how long a human being would live and their active, memory, and that's how we would look into it. And I would just, quote one remark by one of our colleague, and he is from this world of scientific study on glaciers. So this remark, hello,
Hello.
am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay,
You are
okay.
audible. You are audible. Please go on.
Okay. So there was this remark that what happened in Uttarakhand recently. State of Himachal does not have this kind of threat, which is kind of crazy even to think that way, because we know, as we have done some bit of work on Himachal as well, so we know, I mean, this threat is very much possible all across, not only Himalaya but all across the high mountains. So having said that, that's why I titled my slide that the Himalayan Cryosphere, is it a club of few? Because few people understand from the perspective of be it the high altitude shepherds or the highlanders themselves, or some of us who are working on that landscape, or does it concern everyone else? Definitely it does concern everyone else. So what I'm trying to show here is some of the work that we have conducted here. So in the very beginning, let me start with the acknowledgement that this work is something that we have done for DST, where one of my PhD student, Amrita Singh, was involved. And it has some bit of input from my colleague, Rajesh Kumar. So what I'm trying to show here is, this is one of the prominent glacier in Sikkim, and I'm starting my presentation with the rider that no two glaciers behave in the similar fashion. But having said that, there are general trend which glaciers follow, and there are a specific trend also which the glaciers follow. So we are quite used to hearing that the glaciers are receding, which is quite a fact. But glacier recedes in a different manner, on different pace, so so on and so forth. Well, so what we are seeing here is for the benefit of the general audience, I have put some of the pictorial representation of what I am showing here on the right side, and the pictorial depiction of the landscape is on the left side of your screen. So what you see is the outwash plain, which is on the terminal moraine. Moraine is the debris which is carried or rearranged by the glaciers. So at the end of the glacier, there would be terminal moraine, and this is outwash plains. When the melt water comes out of the glacier, it basically rearranges the moraines, and some of the final part of it would be quite leveled. So and it goes on arranging and rearranging the entire landscape. So if one sees the glacier from the top near the snout of the glacier, this is something what it would appear. Sometimes the glacier is having supraglacial lake, means there would be lakes, there would be ponds which would be right on the surface of the glaciers, and the glacier itself would be covered by the debris. So if you look from the top, if you look even through the satellite imagery, unless until you are used to figuring it out, you would not be able to decipher that there's a glacier inside. So what you can see in the second picture is lake which is dammed by the glacier wall itself, and which is covered by debris. So you can see where my cursor is. This is the glacier wall, and this is the lake, and this would be this water would be flowing underneath the glacier, and then a river channel would start. Well, this is how one sees if one climbs on the higher altitude. So we are used to seeing this profile of the mountains, where we see a snow-capped peak in the distance, and in the foreground what we see is the moraines. Well, this is again what we see is outpost plain, and this is what we see here is ablation and accumulation zone. Means the higher up on the glacier, what we see is the accumulation of the snow, and which has permanent presence of the snow. And lower down the glacier, what you get is the ablation zone, where glacier melts. And if there's a balance between the accumulation and ablation, the glaciers are said to be healthy. And if there is positive mass balance, this means if the ablation zone keeps coming down, if there is more addition of snow to the glacier, then ablation, then the melt, then it's a positive. And if there's less addition of snow to the glacier, then it is a negative mass balance, means the glacier is receding. Well, so what you see in this latest picture is the glacier have receded, and you see the moraines which is left behind. So whenever glacier recedes, or if there is dead ice which would be covered by the moraines, so you will have this barren kind of landscape in the foreground of the glaciers. So this is another picture of the similar landscape. So I should rather skip and get to the business straight away. What you see here is the hanging glacier. You must have read and heard in the newspaper there's hanging glacier which broke down. What you see here is again hanging glacier. This is the closer picture of the same glacier, and at the bottom of this hanging glacier is a lake. And this picture is not from the Uttarakhand, because physically I have not been there, and whatever I am speaking about Uttarakhand little later would be on the basis of the studies which is still in the preliminary stage. Well, so what we have heard so far is hanging, a portion of the hanging glacier, it broke down, and it went down and kind of dammed the valley. So that's what it happened. So I just wanted to give you a pictorial depiction of the area. That's why I put these things together. So what you see here is a kind of avalanche valley, or the winter avalanche valley here in Sikkim. So if you can magnify it in a much larger scale, that is what if one has to roughly imagine, one can imagine what has happened in Uttarakhand. So this is again, this is a snow avalanche, remains of the snow avalanche. This is the rock avalanche, and this is how usually the smaller valleys would have avalanches after the winter, during the winter, depending upon the mass of snowfall all throughout. But this smaller avalanches on the local regional scale, it does not gather much eyeball, because then the devastation is not that much. This is again what you see is the ice and the rock avalanche. So once from the narrow valleys, if mass of ice and the boulder it hurtles down with the force of the gravity, it goes on making a fan. It goes on making a delta kind of formation. So it goes on increasing in its surface area. So this is how the situation looks like. Now here, what is there on your screen is basically it's one of the valley here in Sikkim with the similar altitude of what happened in Uttarakhand. And what you see here is mean monthly snow area. So you can obviously see that snow in December, January, and Feb, March is quite higher than rest of the month, as our common sense says. But what it does is with this winter months, the snow, or rather the slope, would be overladen with the snow. One thing which make this event stand out is the avalanche in the winter months, which is usually that frequent. So
Dr.
what could have happened? So here we get to our area of concern. So this is Rishi Ganga River, and this is the river which is in focus. This is
Dr. Uttam, can you wind up in a minute or two?
yeah, sure. So this is the river which is in the focus. This is Raunth Valley, and this particular site is where the first damming it occurred. So from here the slide happened, and it first made and first it made a slide local blockade here, and then it went down here, and then it created a lake here. It blocked as the slush and the mud and the boulder, everything went down. It blocked first the Rishi Ganga River, so there was lake formation here, and then the first dam, which is Rishi Ganga Dam, which is, you can see the red dot here, it got destroyed after the further the combined water it went down with the slush, and as it got on momentum, it further went down and destroyed the Tapovan dam, and further there's a bridge which was destroyed here. Now let us see, as the time is less, I would rather just concentrate to this, and I would wind up. This is, if you can see that the slide where it happened, it started, the point is at nearly about 3,600 meters. And if you see from 3,600 meters, it went down. You see the first dam, which is your Rishi Ganga Dam, it is at a elevation of 2,000 meters. So basically, between a distance of about 12 kilometers, it came down quickly to about 1,600 meters at the slope of about 45 degrees. So you can imagine the speed with which the mud, the slush, and the water came down. And further, you see the point C is your Tapovan Dam, which is downstream. So since the slope is so high, and as broke, a portion of the glacier broke up, it creating a temporary damming, and then again it went down. So with one remark, I would stop here, and maybe possibly in the question and answer session I'll have a little more time, is what could have happened. Usually we do not get avalanche in the winter, a peak of winter. So what happened? Just before the this incident happened, one day before, the air temperature of this season was recorded the highest. That is one of the factor that one can think of, that a portion of the hanging glacier broke off. Why did it happen? How did it happen? Possibly we will have more discussion later. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Uttam. It was so beautiful to listen to you, and I think laypersons like many of us here, I think it was quite interesting to, how you broke down this heavy science into much simpler terms, and I think it gets a good understanding of what would have probably happened in Uttarakhand. Now we'll quickly shift to Dr. Naveen Juyal. Can you just stop sharing, Uttam?
Yeah.
Yeah. So just to quickly introduce Dr. Naveen Juyal, he is retired as a senior scientist from the Physical Research Laboratory in Ahmedabad. His research interests include understanding the pattern of long-term climate variability and its impact on the landform evolution, climate change, and its impact on Earth's surface processes. So I would request Professor Naveen Joel to begin his presentation.
Okay, so can I have to share my presentation from here, isn't it? Or I can,
Yeah, you can. I think you will get, you would have the right to share the screen. So
where does it comes?
I think somebody whose screen is this being shown?
This is, can you see the presentation now on the display? No, it's not.
Yeah,
Can you see?
yeah, we can
Is
see
it-
you. Yeah.
You can see me and the screen? Can you see the screen?
No, we can't see the screen.
Ah, so somebody, I have to operate. I'm really not very good at it. Comment not. Where is the screen?
Or should one of,
Yeah. I've already sent this particular PPT.
yeah. Neha, can you put up the PPT? One second, yeah. Yeah, we will put it up. Yeah, 1 second.
I'm just trying to again get to my this. Where is it? June.
Yeah.
Can you see me? Am I on the screen?
You are on the screen, but not on the PPT. Yeah.
PPT I've sent. Can
Yeah,
you-
it's coming. It's coming now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just put it large. Yeah, full screen. Slideshow.
Yeah. I think
Naveen, can you see your screen?
I can see the screen now, but it has to be
Good.
to the
Be bigger, no? It should be full screen, I think.
yeah. So there has to be a way to put in the slide.
Let me just check it out. Oh boy. No.
It's me. It's not coming.
Naveenji, can you just quickly start? There is a
Okay.
particular issue. I will, while you're speaking,
yeah.
I'll just quickly show the slide. So,
Yeah, you can show the slide. So I'm making a very general this thing, what do you call
Yeah.
presentation. This is regarding what the speaker before me, Dr. Lal, talk about the glacier. So I'm not going to talk about anything on the glacier because he has covered the glacier. But what I'm just quickly going through is that the climate change is a reality that we know. But if you look at long-term climate change variability is, so this time we should be entering into the glacial age, and your this thing, what do you call the citrus should have been the ice on top of it, but that's not happening because we are not really getting into the glacial age. It's the warming continuum. Next slide, please. That's next one, and then next one. Can I go to the next one? Yeah. So this one. Leave it there. So this is the problem. Now, this is the problem in the high Himalaya, which I took in the June 2012. People are really going so crazy about one fungus that fetches them a lot of money. They are burning the grasses in the high altitude just to create artificial heat so that the snow melts. Can I go to the next one? Just click next one, please. Next one. So anyway, okay, you're going too fast. Anyway, so if this is the way that it's
Back.
no, leave it because there's a time. So this is this slide which I want to show you is that see from the evolution there is 4.5 billion year, which we have progressed. Now, if you click again, just make one click.
Neha, just click one. Yeah.
Yeah. So now we should either we should fall down. This is a situation we have created in planet Earth, or we should go to the next planet to really for the safe living. Next one, please. This is what the Stephen Hawking said before he died. Human must colonize another planet in 100 years or face extinction. So that is going to become a reality if we really don't understand and check our act of destruction. Next one. Next one, please. Okay. So just to quickly go through this particular tragedy, that is the particular area where the tragedy is struck. this time. Let me take you a little back in time. 1970, there was a catastrophic flood in the Alaknanda Valley in the month of July. That was a monsoon. And if you can see the tilted mark of the flood in the form of the flood deposit, which are lying very close to Chamboli district. Next one, please. Before 1970, there was another flood in 1894 that was started from this particular stream, which is called Birhi Ganga. And you can see the scar in the mountain, which is something like 9,000 feet high, which rolled down in 1893 August during the monsoon again. And what happened after that? Can you go to the next slide, please? So it created a lake. This is a lake called the Gona Lake, very famous Gona Lake in 1894. This lake existed for till 1970, and in 1970 flood, the entire lake got washed away. Next one, please. So when 1894 flood happened, this is a place called Srinagar. This is a place where the Central Industry is located in Uttarakhand, and this particular terrace on which terrace always has to be at the burnt of the flood is a 1894 settlement, which was buried under the 1894 sediment. Next one. And that particular lake which I showed you that existed for 70 odd years. And you can see the mountain scar, which rolled down in 1893, created a lake behind it. Now there is no lake, it just got wiped away, and there is a stream going on. And on the left corner, in the month of, I think, January, the Chief Minister of Uttarakhand went there because they wanted to develop this area for recreation for the tourists. In the process of excavation, next one, please. They got this particular boat, which got buried in the 1970 flood. Maybe I think prior to 1970, this boat used to operate in this area, and a lot of tourists used to go there. Next one. Now, see what is really pathetic, that we really very soon we forget things, and our memories are very, very short. Now, this particular bridge which you are seeing, this bridge is on the Mandakini River, and if you see the pillars of the bridge on the right side, click next one, please. No, just go backward. Just go backward. One small click. The animation is not coming. Anyway, go. The 1970 flood overtopped this particular bridge, and there is a stone on the right side of this particular pillar, which is where it is engraved that during 1970 the flood overtopped this particular bridge, and this bridge was destroyed. Ironically, in 2013 again, this bridge completely wiped away. Next one, please. Now this is the stone which was there. Now it is not there because in 2013 this bridge is completely wiped away. You can see it is written in Hindi. On 20 and 21st July 70 in the midnight, this bridge was completely swept away by the 1970 flood. Next one. Now the 1970 flood. Can you just put a small click? At the bottom, there is a black line you can see at the bottom. Is the high flood mark? Yes, July 1970 high flood mark is here. Alaknanda is flowing on the left, on your right side. You can see the white patch. And 2013 flood was where the student is standing with his hand. So the flood magnitude has gone manifold. Next one, please. Now, what happened this month? The tragedy which happened on 7th of February. Unfortunately or fortunately, I was working in this area from 31st of January to 6th of February. And so, as my earlier speaker said that there was a extremely high temperature. Of course, I don't have the number, but what I experienced there from 3rd, 4th, and 5th, the 3 days, there was drizzling, and in the higher reaches, there was just snowfall. It happened. Now on 6th, it was a very bright sunny day, very hot, bright sunny day. Now mechanism, I will not dwell in detail, but just to give you a feeling what happened. This is a Raunti Ghat. You can see on the right side of yours, this is a Raunti Ghat. If you can see my cursor, it's a Raunti Ghat. And this is your Rishi Ganga flowing in this particular direction. This particular stream, which comes out from two glaciers, one is called a Raunti Glacier, second is called the Nanda Gumti Glacier. Raunti Glacier is 5 kilometers long, and Nanda Gumti is 2.5 kilometers long. The Raunti Glacier has got enormous number of crevasses in it, and the cliff which broke as an avalanche came from Nanda Gumti, not from the Raunti. Raunti Glacier comes from the northern face of Trisul peak, which is 7,000 meters high. Now, this stream has got two distinct morphology. Up to say something like 10 kilometers, it is a wide U-shaped valley. lot of boulder. In fact, the boulder size, if you see, they are more than, I think, 50, 60 meters. In fact, at places, the river used to flow under the boulders you can cross over from this particular boulder, indicating that this Raunti Ghat, this Ghat is a sediment surplus stream. Only it is only waiting for a trigger. So the trigger came in the form of avalanche or the debris flows or the puncturing of the subglacial lake that I'm not going to discuss here. But the mechanism happened is a lot of sediment came. What they did, the part of the sediment got bypassed through the barrage, destroying the bridge, and then went into the Dholi Ganga further downstream. But part of it went inside. Unfortunately, no one was knowing, till 9th, no one had an idea that this Rishi Ganga was blocked. It was Dr. Naresh Rana, my colleague. He went physically there and brought this information out. Next one, please. Now, this is Naresh Rana, the very first person who is there on foot. No helicopter, no assistance was given to me. The geologist by professor. Then this is the blockade of the Rishi Ganga. Surprisingly, this has happened in the winter because the discharge is low. Although the Nanda Devi National Park, which has got 6-7 large glaciers, had it been a time of monsoon, the catastrophe would have been much more alarming. So this is the lake which was formed behind that particular barrier. Next one. Next one, please. Yeah. So see, see what I'm trying to emphasize here is that we are really in an area which is prone to this kind of destruction. The deposit which you see is a 1970 flood deposit, and there on this particular yellow arrow which you see, there was a guest house of the Garhwal Mandal Vikas Nigam. In 2013, this got washed away. Next one. Now this is the northern face of the Nanda Devi National Park, and this particular avalanche debris generated from a glacier which comes out from the east Drunagiri. Now this happened in 2004, which blocked again the Alaknanda and destroyed a couple of villages. Next one, please. Now this is the rainy villages somewhere up here, and the powerhouse was here. And this is the Rishi Ganga, which is now after the flood. This entire powerhouse and the barrage was somewhere upstream that got completely destroyed. Next one. Now, coming back to I'm not talking geology here. I'm not talking anything. I'm just talking about the consequence that why are we so having so much of philosophical bias? See, when the lake was created in Rishi Ganga, certainly this lake is not dangerous. It is now oozing out. Water has started coming out. 11th again, he was there. My colleague was there. So it is oozing out. But see, still, if we should have a system of disseminating the warning of this kind of extreme events, and Higher Himalaya is prone to this. But what is the warning system we have got? We just put the board like this and ask villager not to go to the riverbed because a lot of hydropowers are coming up, being operational. So and they say that if you go, then you will be sole responsible for that. So there is no system. It is round the year. You don't have to go. If any damage happens, you are the sole responsible for that. Next one, please. This is for the Vishnupriya project. Next one, please. This is for Tiri Dam. Again, there they say that because of the drawdown effect, things can really go hayway. So you should not go to the reservoir. So this is our early warning system in 21st century. Imagine that is the way we are going. Next one, please. And because of this is 2013 picture I took in the month of July. The June tragedy happened. This is Mandakini River. There was a school here. You can see the school. On top of the school, there is a lot of sand is on top of it. Fortunately, it was Sunday. No student was there in the school. Otherwise, not a single guy would have survived. What happened? This is surprising that you are building a school at the river bank, not knowing the behavior. Go to the next one, please. Now, after the incident, again, I went in the month of March 2014. They have started reconstructing it. Instead of shifting the school, they have started reconstructing it. Next one, please. Now they have made this particular wall in 2016. This is the way we are treating the innocent lives and the local habitation without really appreciating the fact that the river, which looks so beautiful in the month of 2016 October, had such a furious appearance. Next one, please. So to sum up, this is what we are. The people in the mountains are like this R.K. Lakshman's odd man out. We have to just listen and listen. So to summarize my presentation, let me tell you honestly, the the tragedy which happened in, because I'm focusing only on the 7th February 2021, that to begin with, it was a purely climatic phenomena, and we are working on that. It's a purely climatic phenomena. So there's no doubt. But as the flood progressed, or the obstruction caused by the land, the debris and the everything through that Raunti Guard, it probably would have made multiple blockades on its way. Finally, it came to the Rishi Ganga. When it came to the Rishi Ganga, there another blockade we created. From there, the human intervention comes into picture. The very first barrage, we, the local people, are not allowed to go to the buffer zone. If my student was denied to enter he went on 7th itself. He denied the permission. He said, I don't want your heli. I just want to go there. He said, no, you will not be allowed to go because you take a permission from the forest department. Whereas the hydropower is concerned, they entered into the buffer zone, made the barrage. That particular barrage obstructed the first flow and probably hold it for a couple of minutes. And that would have amplified the impact. As it went down, the power, the tail race tunnel where the people were located, power people were located, that got washed away. Most importantly, then comes the bridge. Now we see the rivers during the time when it is not in its, in a furious glory, I can call it. The span, the height of the bridge was never kept in mind that the boulder size meters, 20, 30 meter size boulders can come and ram it up. That particular bridge created another obstruction, created another lake temporarily for 5-10 minutes. If you have seen the video, the water started flowing on the road, and then it pushed the bridge down. Now, then comes the third obstruction in the form of your Tapovan hydropower project, where the barrage was at the verge of completion. And what a blunder they did! They put the muck in front of the tunnel, and that barrage obstructed the water, and the water swirled backward and pushed that entire muck inside, where we do not know how many people are buried. Still, we do not know. So the amplification of this particular flood was certainly caused by the human intervention. The issue is, had there not been the barrages on the way, if we had taken into consideration the height of the bridge, then the fury of this particular flood, because any flood which is generated by so-called Gulf or landslide induced lake outburst, it has the peak of the flood. The peak of the flood is in the hour's time. It does not really persist for an enormous period of time. It should have really been moved downstream.
Will you be able to wind up in a minute?
Yes, I'm through, sir.
Sorry to stop you. It's so interesting what you're saying, but just for the sake of time.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah. Thanks a lot, Professor Joel. And I think your lived experience there, I think it was so beautiful to listen to you, and coming from your own experience and your colleagues there, and also bringing to focus this entire intersections of climate and human intervention. I think that's the point you are making. And also simple thing like, early warning systems, which could have helped. I'm sure there'll be questions to you as we go along. And now we'll move to the next speaker, that is Manshi Asher. She is a co-founder of Himdara Environment and Action Collective in Himachal Pradesh. The collective extends support and solidarity to local communities who are trying to assert their rights over their natural resources like land, water, and forests. And they have been also doing extensive documentation on issues around hydropower projects in the state, and using the insights for advocacy and public outreach, and also create a public discourse around the type of destructive development is taking place in the Himalayan region, especially Himachal Pradesh. So Manshi, it's over to you. About 8 minutes, Manshi. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'll try to stick to the time. And in my presentation, I'm just going to I would like to focus on the political economy of hydropower and the entire politics around it, and why this issue is relevant in the case of, what has happened, the Uttarakhand tragedy, and what is happening also in Himachal, which has not got enough attention, or probably gets very short-lived kind of attention. So I'm going to try and draw attention to that. Is the slideshow visible?
Slideshow mode, Manshi.
Yeah. Is it okay now?
Yes.
Yeah.
You can go ahead. Thanks.
Yeah. So I'm going to talk about Himachal, which is the neighboring state. The boundary of Garhwal is connected with Himachal. Falls in the Western Himalaya, is topographically, geographically, socio-economically, ecologically very similar kind of conditions to Uttarakhand. And as you know, the defining feature of the entire Himalayan region and the Northwest Himalayas of fragility exists here too in Himachal Pradesh. It forms, Himachal is part of the Indus river basin and has 5 main rivers, Byas, Yamuna, Ravi, Satluj, and Chenab. The Yamuna forms a part of the Ganga river basin, which is to the east, and the other rivers are all flowing and meeting the Indus. Now, I am going to try and focus on the issue of climate change. And yes, there is, as Uttamji also said, that the situation in Himachal is not any different from Uttarakhand. It is seeing the impacts of climatic crisis. You have 19% or more deglaciation happening. There's an increase in temperatures, there's a decrease in precipitation, whether it's in the form of snow or a monsoon rainfall. There are erratic weather events. And as a result of this, there are many other kind of fallouts, whether it is forest fires or it is scarcity of water and drying up of you know, underground aquifers, or whether it is climatic disasters. Like in 2013, when the disaster hit Kedarnath, there were flash floods in the Satluj as well, and about you know, damages worth 1,500 crores. But since not so many lives were lost, it didn't get so much attention as did Kedarnath. The thing about climate change and all these, you know, various kind of changes that are going on, this crisis that exists is neatly, you know, clubbed into these 2 words called climate change. And I want to unravel 2 issues that are there with this, or 2 kind of problems that have come as a result of this clubbing. Is that when we talk about climate change, it seems like it is a natural phenomena, and it is something that we have no control over, and it is something that is happening outside. It is too big. While that is partially true, that it is something that is not, it's a global phenomena. It is not just a local phenomena, but its repercussions are local. And the second thing is that this is development induced. It's the result of an anthropogenic activities over the last 100 years, especially. And we cannot kind of call it like a natural phenomena, or we cannot try to kind of you know, make it look like it is something that has nothing to do with development. That is one thing. The other thing that I want to draw attention to, which is irony of this whole situation, is that the whole climate change approach and model that has come globally, the entire narrative that has built has focused on the energy transition from fossil fuels and pushing technologies like run-of-the-river hydropower technology and production of hydropower from the 1990s onwards that you see, you know, surge in, is part of this entire global model. And it is happening in the name of climate change mitigation. That is the whole irony of this situation. If you look at Himachal Pradesh, which is now the hydropower state of India, producing close to 10,500, I mean, has a capacity and harnessed capacity of 10,500 megawatts. It's Uttarakhand and you know, even Kashmir in the Western Himalayas. And you can see in this graph that you know, Himachal is already also building trying to reach about 23,000 megawatts of planned projects. Though the total planned projects in Uttarakhand and Kashmir may be larger, but Himachal is has been, you know, kind of ahead in this race of construction. And where exactly is it constructing these projects? If we look at, and this is the map, these maps are from the State Disaster Management Authority report on vulnerability mapping in Himachal Pradesh. And if you look at the location of these projects, 27 big dams right now built in Himachal already. And of these, 10 are in the red zone, which is the highly vulnerable zone, vulnerable to flash floods, landslides, to earthquakes, and various other disasters. So you can see that the siting of these hydropower projects is happening in an area which is already extremely vulnerable ecologically and geologically, and to climatic disasters. If we kind of move ahead and see, okay, what have been the impacts of these projects? And I think that highly invisibilized, high underplayed, because of several reasons. I would say because of strategic ignorance, institutional kind of ignorance, as well as, and I call it strategic because it's not like information about the fragility of this area, or like we were talking about, that information about climatic changes and crisis is not available. It is very much available, but this is strategic ignorance because there is a principle of profit over principles of science and law which are being abided by, and the principles of science and law have been dumped into the river, whatever is remaining of it. Now, I want you to look at the three pictures here. I mean, these are just images from different places in Himachal. The first image on your left is from 2013 in Kinnor. This is the site of a affected village of the Kashang project, where there was a big, massive landslide and slope failure. You can see in the middle a huge muck dump on the Ravi River by the Chamera project. And I will delve on the third slide, which is the Urni landslide in the Satluj Valley in Kinnor. And this landslide is not new. This has been active since 1992, but this landslide was way smaller. And then the Karcham Wangtuk project gets built in this area, and from 2005 onwards, from 2009 onwards, the work starts. And you have right now 3 different tunnels under this village. The Flushing Tunnel, the Edit Tunnels, as well as the Headrace Tunnel of the Karcham Wangtuk project. And in 2013, this landslide just became massive. Now it's taken the orchards, and the village is sitting precariously on this landslide. When the State Geological Survey of India conducts a site investigation, they come out with a report. Not just do they very clearly say that this has nothing to do with the project, they also put the whole blame of this landslide on the village, saying that the irrigation method that is used by the community has led to this landslide. And apart from that, they call it a natural disaster. So this is just an example of what is happening in different sites. It's not just when a massive tragedy occurs, but these little tragedies that are happening all the time, which are not getting any media attention, which have all been placed in front of the courts. This has happened in Himachal by 2010, when 7,500 megawatt was already made. In Shimla High Court, an IAS officer, Abhay Shukla, presented a report where he said that there should be a moratorium on new dams, and there should be a review of the hydropower policy in Himachal, given the kind of impacts that this has had, and especially the violations that are happening as far as ecological flows goes, on muck dumping, deforestation. He raised many issues, but this is dissed by the government. Now, if the ecology and the localities are suffering or facing the impacts, it's also the projects that are facing the impacts. And the biggest impact is the cost and the time overrun that is happening. Take the example of the NHPC Parbati 2 project, 800 megawatts. It has been under construction since I don't know the date, but I think it's about the year, sorry, but it's been more than 2 decades. It has been under construction. It has had a 250% cost overrun. Obviously, this electricity is extremely costly, and these projects are becoming financially unviable, as you can see in this chart here, where there's an increase in the capacity addition, but the revenue that is promised, is not increasing. And so it raises this question that, you had said, एक तीर से हम 2 निशान करेंगे, हम green growth कर रहे हैं. तो green कर रहे हैं because हम कार्बन से निकलने मतलब जो कार्बन उत्पन्न करता है वैसी टेक्नोलॉजी से नहीं बना रहे. We are going to build clean and green energy. That we have seen fail. And then there was the growth part of it. That objective also failed. So your dual objective of green growth is not working. That is clear with these hydropower projects. But who is investing in these projects, despite of the fact that revenues are falling and the sector is in dumps? And you can see in this this chart here that it is the central and the public sector enterprises, state and public sector enterprises that are investing in these projects, that are mostly building these projects. In fact, after 2010 and especially after 2013, because of the rise in costs, no private company wants to touch these projects with a barge pole. So now these projects are being built by NHPC, NTPC, these companies. And the profit, and of course, there are the contractors, the entire contractor lobby that is getting, of course, they are private and they are getting advantage or benefits from this project, apart from the technocrats and the whole riding on the whole green growth narrative. So I'm just going, and I just want to end with the question of who is paying the cost then. Because obviously, if the revenues are falling, there's somebody, and the government is still pushing it. And the government is saying, hum 20 se jitne project hain, they are now renewable. The government is making power purchase obligatory and saying that, nahi, ye hum log banayenge ye bijli. So then, who is going to pay for this? And it is being paid by workers. As we saw in this particular tragedy, this cost is being paid by the people and by the environment. And that is all I want to say for now.
Yeah. Thanks, Manshi, for a very wonderful presentation and bringing in the whole political economy and the anthropogenic causes in terms of along with the climate change. Otherwise, there is a tendency to naturalize everything. I mean, that's the whole thing, and these issues are not problematized. And very often with the climate change discourse, I think there is this whole narrative of, even large hydros are clean, green, and cheap and things. So this whole question of, we try to compromise on the arteries to save the lungs. That's a type of debate which is there. So thanks for bringing all these aspects into the discussions. So we will quickly move to our next speaker, that is Vimal Bhai. He's with, as we all know, with the Matru Jan Sangathan, has been working in the Uttarakhand and the Himalayan region, especially the Ganga and the Yamuna Valley for quite some time now. He's also part of the National Alliance of People's Movement, NAPM. So, Vimal Bhai, it's your time.
Thank you, जिंदाबाद साथियों. हम एक बहुत दुखद घड़ी में दोबारा से मिल रहे हैं, और ये दुखद घड़ी सरकार, राजनेता, सुप्रीम कोर्ट, मैं कोर्ट इन कोर्ट कहूंगा सुप्रीम कोर्ट, और लोकल एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन की वजह से दोबारा हमारे सामने है. और ये हमें आप काफी लोगों ने बहुत अच्छी तरीके से उसके तकनीकी चीजों पे बात रखी है और बहुत ही सुंदर तरह से मैप वगैरह सब दिए हैं. मैं उनका बहुत आभारी हूं, और कितनी जानकारी दी, नवानी साहब को भी सुना और मानसी बहन ने भी कहा. मैं कुछ गैर तकनीकी बातें रखना चाहूंगा क्योंकि मैं तकनीकी व्यक्ति नहीं हूं. मुझे लगता है कि हमें इस आपदा को इस तरह भी देखना पड़ेगा कि इसके दोषी कौन है, और जो दोषी हैं उनको हम कैसे कटघरे में खड़ा कर सकते हैं, उस पर हमें कोई स्ट्रेटेजी बनानी होगी. अगर कहीं कोई साथी नोट कर रहे हैं तो कृपया इस बात को नोट कर लीजिए, क्योंकि हम लोग सिर्फ मीटिंग के लिए नहीं बैठे हैं, शायद हम इसलिए बैठे हैं कि अब ये आपने बार बार ना हो पाए। तो पहली बात तो ये मुझे लगी। दूसरा, मुझे ये लगता है कि ये बांध का एक पूरा जो भ्रम हमारे सामने खड़ा किया गया, यानी लोगों के सामने, उसकी तरफ भी हमें जाना पड़ेगा। एक सेकेंड, आपने मेरा वीडियो बंद किया हुआ है क्या? हेलो,
आप आपका वीडियो ऑन कर सकते हैं?
हेलो,
जिसकी
What
वजह
happened
से
to
वीडियो
include-
ऑफ हो गया है, क्या आप आपका वीडियो ऑन कर सकते हैं?
हाँ नहीं, मेरा आपने किया है, ऐसा लग रहा है कि बिकॉज द होस्ट हैज डिसेबल।
नहीं,
वो-
अच्छा, okay. You try to put in again, Vimal bhai.
हाँ, मैंने, हाँ मेरा
Okay,
हुआ।
yeah.
अरे मैं लगा मेरी शक्ल से डर गए सब।
अरे
तो मैं कह रहा था कि पहली बात तो हमें ये देखना है कि आखिर इसके दोषी कौन है, और दूसरा ये कि उत्तराखंड की परिस्थितियां दूसरे राज्यों से काफी अलग है। यूं तो हिमालयन राज्यों में ये बात बहुत तेजी से है कि बांध आएगा तो विकास होगा, मगर उत्तराखंड के अंदर में जहां पर भी ये बांध हैं, और रवि चोपड़ा कमेटी भी जब गई थी, खास करके रवि जी ही गए थे, तो उनको भी जहां लेके गए, मैं उसका जिक्र फिर से करना चाहूंगा। लाता तपोवन के क्षेत्र में, उस गांव में बहुत अच्छी मीटिंग हुई, और बहुत पुराना गांव है वो। वहां पर की छीनो झपटो आंदोलन की शुरुआत हुई धन सिंह जी वगैरह के माध्यम से, मगर गांव के लोगों ने अभी अस्वीकार किया। हमारे जैसे लोगों को उन्होंने गांव में घुसने पे पाबंदी की, और उसके ऊपर में ऋषि गंगा प्रोजेक्ट, तपोवन परियोजना की बात स्थिति पाई, मगर पब्लिक के होने के बाद से लेकर के बरसों बरस तक लोगों के साथ खड़े हुए, मगर आज लोग अस्वीकार करते। लोगों को परिणवादी नहीं चाहिए, लोगों को चाहिए कि सिर्फ उनको जो रोजगार दे सके, जो विकास ला सके। तो हमें इस भ्रम को तोड़ने की कोई रणनीति देखनी पड़ेगी कि कैसे हम लोगों के सामने इस बात को रखें, जो हम करने की कोशिश तो करते भी हैं, कि बांधों से ही विकास नहीं है, क्योंकि सरकार ने सब जगह ये तरीका बना दिया है कि भाई बांध आएगा तो विकास होगा, अगर बांध नहीं है तो आपको सड़क नहीं मिलेगी, आपको पुल नहीं मिलेगा, आपके रोजगार नहीं पैदा हो पाएगा। और ये स्थिति देखिए, तपोवन विष्णु घाट के अंदर में 2011 में बांध बन जाना था। हमने तपोवन विष्णु घाट की एनवायरमेंट क्लियरेंस को 1 अप्रैल 2004 के अंदर में नेशनल एनवायरमेंट एपीलेट अथॉरिटी में चुनौती दी, मगर उस समय जो मौजूद थे एनईए के अंदर में, उन्होंने डिसमिस किया कि नहीं, आप तो 90 दिन के बाद आए। हम लोहाई नाग पाला पे बढ़े, और उसमें बढ़ते रहे, तो बढ़ने के कारण से नेशनल की ट्रिब्यूनल हमको मिल पाया, हम सबको। मगर हमको देखने की बात ये आई कि लोग हमसे कैसे दूर हुए। लोगों को बांध का 11 में जो बनने वाला था वो आज तक नहीं बन पाया, और अभी बन भी नहीं पाएगा, मगर लोगों को लगता है कि बांध है, टूटता है, बनता है, हमको रोजगार मिलता है। तो ये बड़ी चुनौती हमारे सामने है कि, और खास करके उन लोगों के सामने जो कि हम कहते हैं कि बांधों से नुकसान। तीसरा, हम जो क्लाइमेट चेंज की बात बार बार कह रहे हैं, ये बहुत बड़ी टर्म अभी भी है। ये इतने बड़े शब्द जलवायु परिवर्तन अभी तक आम लोगों की पहुंच में बहुत दूर है, क्योंकि हमारा जो मतलब जो हमारा अभी छोटा मोटा सोशल मीडिया ही बचता है, उसको भी बंद करने की साजिशें चल रही हैं, मगर हमारी आवाज लोगों तक पहुंच भी बहुत कम है। क्यों? क्योंकि सरकार के ऊपर से लेके नीचे तक तथा कथित जनप्रतिनिधि इस बात को लेकर के आगे बढ़ते हैं कि उनको विकास चाहिए, और विकास को जो भी बांध रोकता है, जो इस बात में आते हैं, वो विकास को रोकने वाला है। तो ये भी बड़ी चुनौती हमारे सामने आती है। इसके अलावा में एक बड़ी चुनौती ये भी है कि हम वहां के लोगों को स्थायी विकास की बात कैसे दें, क्योंकि उत्तराखंड के जिन इलाकों में यहाँ पे बांध हैं, पलायन बहुत तेजी से, बांध बनने के या बांध की शुरुआत होने के बाद में पलायन उल्टा होता है। लोग आते हैं कि अच्छा हमको अब रोजगार मिलेगा क्योंकि ठेके खुलने वाले हैं। ये बात दीगर है कि किसी बांध के अंदर में रोजगार उत्पन्न नहीं हुए, जितने कहे गए कभी भी नहीं हुए। हमने टिहरी बांध की आज ही मालूम करा था कि कुल सुप्रीम कोर्ट में उन्होंने टिहरी बांध में 600 कुछ लोगों को रोजगार मिल पाया था स्थायी, तो ठेके पे तो बहुत मिलता। एक चीज और भी है इसके अंदर में जो हमें निकालना चाहिए कि हिमाचल में भी लगातार से, करछम भक्तों की जन सुनवाई का याद, बहने नाम लिया तो याद आता है 3 बार उसकी जन सुनवाई कैंसिल हो पाई थी और लोगों की जो आशंकाएं थी जो आज सामने साबित हो पाई। मगर ये उस समय जो हमने मुद्दे खड़े किए, आशंकाएं खड़ी की, उनको कैसे हम ट्रांसफॉर्म करें आज की हमारी बातों में। कि देखिए, हमने कल कहा था मनेरी वाली 2 जहां पर बना हुआ है भागीरथी पर, टिहरी बांध के ऊपर में, वहां पर जामा गांव के लोग अभी कहते हैं आया था और उन्होंने हमको बोला था कि भाई सुरंग बने दोगे तो तुम्हारा गांव जाएगा, और जामा गांव खत्म हुआ, बहुत करके खत्म हुआ, और आज वो इस बात को स्वीकार करते हैं। मगर घाटियों की दूरी कैसे दूर हो, लोगों तक कैसे पहुंचे, ये पूरे मुद्दे हमको जो चुनौतियां हैं, मुझे लगता है उन चुनौतियों को लेके बढ़ना चाहिए। मैं खास करके अभी की घटना पे भी कुछ कहना चाहूंगा कि तपोवन विष्णु घाट की जो टनल बोरिंग मशीन है वो 2009 के अंदर में साथी, और उसके बाद में अब फिर 2019 में भी फिर इसका कोई पहली वाली इसका कोई दूसरी वाली गई और टूटी और अभी तो स्क्रैप होके बाहर निकल गई। अभी जो पानी आया था वो नवीन भाई और सब तकनीकी रूप में ज्यादा जानते हैं, मगर वीडियो से मालूम पड़ता है कि राइट साइड में जब पानी निकल रहा था और उसने बांध के गेट बंद थे। ये बहुत बड़ा, मैं तो मानता हूं कि तकनीकी जानकारी ना होने पर भी कि क्रिमिनल ऑफेंस था। पानी पहुंचने में आधा घंटा लगता, खुले अगर गेट खुले होते जो बैराज में पड़े हुए थे तो पानी थोड़ा बीच से निकलता, पानी का प्रवाह कम होता। मगर अभी तो स्थिति की वो राइट साइड में टकराया और फिर लेफ्ट में जो टनल थी उसके अंदर में पानी घुसा और मजदूरों की, जिनकी संख्या बिल्कुल ज्ञात नहीं है, उनकी मृत्यु हुई है, कुछ बच पाए और आगे की स्थिति क्या होगी। बहुत से वीडियोज आए जो बताते हैं कि कैसे टनल के पास के में लोग मारे गए। तो ये जो क्रिमिनल ऑफेंस बांध कंपनियां करती हैं, हमें इसके ऊपर में क्या करना चाहिए ये भी हमें देखना पड़ेगा। क्यों? क्योंकि 2013 की आपदा के समय भी ये बहुत बात जो जम के उठाई सरकार ने कि हम एक अर्ली अलार्म सिस्टम करेंगे। 2013 के बाद आज 7 साल बीत गए, सुप्रीम कोर्ट भी सोता रहा है। सुप्रीम कोर्ट इस आपदा का बड़ा दोषी है। रवि चोपड़ा जी बैठे हुए जानते हैं, तो सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने कोई संज्ञान नहीं लिया। ये अर्ली अलार्म सिस्टम की बात आज फिर उत्तराखंड सरकार बोल रही है, उनके बयानों में आ रहा है। तो जनाब 7 साल तक आप क्या कर रहे थे? सुप्रीम कोर्ट की बात कहूंगा कि जब रवि चोपड़ा जी ने जो कमेटी बनी उसके पहले सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने 13 अगस्त 2013 के अंदर में 13 अगस्त को ये ऑर्डर दिया कि भाई आप सभी बांधों पे मोरेटोरियम करिए उत्तराखंड के और कोई स्वीकृति नहीं होगी। मगर जो कमेटी उन्होंने बनाने के लिए कहा, उस कमेटी को गंगा तक सीमित किया गया और गंगा घाटी में भी उसको मंदाकिनी, अलकनंदा और थोड़ा भागीरथी में सीमित किया। क्योंकि रवि चोपड़ा कमेटी जहां जहां गई उन्होंने उस बात को रखा और हमने उनको आपदा की बर्बादियां दिखाई और उन्होंने रिपोर्ट में लाई। वो बात और है कि पिंडर घाटी जहां पर हमने 11 साल लगभग हो रहे बांध रुका पड़ा है, उसकी बात नहीं आ पाई रिपोर्ट में, मगर फिर भी अभी सरकार उस बांध के आगे नहीं बढ़ पाई। मगर ये जो सभी बांधों की बात आई, रिपोर्ट गई सुप्रीम कोर्ट में, आज तक पर्यावरण मंत्रालय, पावर मिनिस्ट्री और जल शक्ति मंत्रालय, ये नाम रोज बदलते रहते हैं, तीनों के कोई ज्वाइंट एफिडेविट फाइल नहीं हुआ। सुप्रीम कोर्ट, जिसको अर्नब गोस्वामी की याचिका सुनने के लिए समय है, हजारों लोगों की हत्याएं हो रही है, ये मैं कहूंगा ये पर्यावरण के कारण नहीं हो रही, ये उन लोगों के कारण हो रही है जो इन परियोजनाओं को बना रहे हैं। सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने कोई संज्ञान नहीं लिया, किसी मिनिस्ट्री को कोई नोटिस नहीं दिया, किसी मिनिस्टर को नोटिस नहीं पड़ा। मैं समझता हूं कि सर्वोच्च न्यायालय को भी हमें कटघरे में खड़ा करना ही होगा। हम तो करेंगे अपनी ताकत के साथ में, और इनको कहना पड़ेगा कि आपने जो चुप बैठा, जो चुप रहा, वो इतिहास में वो दोषी कहलाएगा। और ये दोषी है इस बात के, जब सुप्रीम कोर्ट, मैं खत्म करने वाला हूँ, ये जो भी कुछ हुआ है इसके लिए ये हम
हेलो
हेलो म्यूट किया क्या?
क्या
हेलो,
कुछ हो गया क्या मालूम? आप बोलिए बोलिए।
अच्छा, मुझे लगा नहीं, उसमें लगा था कि आप म्यूट किया गया, मुझे तो
नो नो
लिखा
नो
हुआ आया था। तो हम कह रहे हैं कि इन सबको हमें दोषी कैसे करार दिया जाए, इसकी कैंपेन खड़ी करनी पड़ेगी। नहीं तो ये आपदाएं चलती रहेंगी, सुरंगों में मजदूर मारे जाते रहेंगे, हम क्लाइमेट चेंज को बात कहेंगे। अभी उत्तर प्रदेश में अगर कोई केस दाखिल हो जाए तो शायद हमारे बिष्ट जी जो कि उत्तराखंड से ही गए हैं, अजीत क्या बिष्ट जी जो है वहाँ के मुख्यमंत्री, वो ग्लेशियर को गिरफ्तार करके मंगवा लेंगे, तो वो हो जाना चाहिए। मगर लोगों के ऊपर में जो बात आई है तो इसलिए बांध कंपनियों का। मैं एक बात और जोड़ दूं कि 2013 में हम हर जिले के अंदर में गए, डिस्ट्रिक्ट मजिस्ट्रेट को मिले, जिला पुलिस अधीक्षक को मिले, धरने प्रदर्शन किए लोगों ने, मगर कहीं कोई एफआईआर इनके खिलाफ में दाखिल नहीं हुई, कोई जांच नहीं हुई। सारे बांध बिना किसी एनवायरमेंट इंपैक्ट असेसमेंट के, इवन जो कि होना चाहिए था, आगे बढ़ गए। आज सिंगोली भटवाड़ी दोबारा बना दिया, तपोवन विष्णुघाट की ये स्थिति हुई, नीचे विष्णुघाट पीपल कोठी भी, और वर्ल्ड बैंक भी चुपचाप से बैठा हुआ है। वर्ल्ड बैंक ने कोई नहीं, जबकि उन्होंने पूरी घाटी की, यहाँ की और सतलुज की स्टडी की थी, क्यूमुलेटिव स्टडी, उसके बाद में भी ये परिस्थिति आई और ये बांध मौजूद है। तो हमको बहुत ताकत के साथ में इन 4-5 मुद्दों को कि लोगों को भी कैसे खड़ा किया जाए, लोगों को इस बात की जानकारी समझ कि वो जाने की बांधों के फायदे नहीं है, और सरकारों को भी कैसे कटघरे में खड़ा किया जाए। सुप्रीम कोर्ट के सामने करेंगे कटघरे में खड़ा, मगर सुप्रीम कोर्ट को भी कहीं कटघरे में खड़ा करना पड़ेगा। इसलिए मुझे लगता है, और साथ ही वर्ल्ड बैंक को भी, अभी दुनुराई जी से बीच में बात हुई थी, और दुनुराई जी का ये कहना था कि हम विश्व बैंक को भी कहीं पकड़ेंगे, और पकड़ना चाहिए, हमें उसमें भी जाना पड़ता है, मगर हम उसको पकड़ेंगे, ऐसा उनका कहना था। तो हमें इन सारी बातों को लेकर के आगे बढ़ने की बात है। अशीम भाई, मैं विष्णुघाट पीपल कोठी परियोजना जो कि तपोवन विष्णुघाट के नीचे है, उसमें वर्ल्ड बैंक का पैसा है, टीएसडीसी बना रही है, जिसने टिहरी बांध बनाया। तो अभी की मैं अपनी बात समाप्त करता हूँ। शुक्रिया, जिंदाबाद।
Yeah, thank you very much, Vimal Bhai. I think you also raised a few critical issues, especially for moving forward on this in terms of larger campaign, so that these things don't repeat. We know that in 2013, we had this huge tragedy. There was the Ravi Chopra committee. So I think this is a question we need to ask: what happened in this last 7-8 years? What steps were taken? And some of the issues which you talked about employment, livelihoods, the type of development and things, I think probably Ravi Chopra ji will pick up some of those issues. I think his last presentation he will be making. Okay, thank you very much, Vimal Bhai. We'll get back to some of the issues which you raised about how to take all these things forward in the Q&A session and things. Okay, yeah. Now we move to our next speaker. I know we are running out of little time. It's very difficult to stop speakers when they're speaking so well and to the point. Anyway, hopefully we might extend the session by about 10-15 minutes so that we can, make up the time and we don't compromise on the question and answer session. So we have the next speaker, that is Mallika Bhanot. She is part of the Ganga Ahwan, a citizens forum, working for the conservation of the Ganga, broadly the Himalayan basin or Himalayan landscape. She is also one of the expert members of the monitoring committee of the Bhagirathi eco-sensitive zone and has been involved in some of these issues, especially the large infrastructure projects, whether it is Char Dham and other type of things. So it is over to Mallika.
Yeah, thank you, Joy. Let me just start the entire presentation. I won't take too much of your time because I guess that everybody is of course also being covering everything from all angles. My only point of contention to begin with is to understand and put into perspective that what has happened in Uttarakhand is actually a threat to all of us. And we must take that into consideration, into very, very strong consideration. And my entire point of this entire thing of this 5 minutes that I would take of your time is to basically prove that how is it that what has happened in Uttarakhand is actually a matter of concern for each and every person who is located in Maharashtra or South India or North India or everywhere. The area that we are talking about is the food and water security hub of this country. Our entire food and water security is in danger right now because of whatever is happening. The ecosystem of Himalayas, the ecosystem of this Ganga Himalayan basin is the key factor, to ensure sustainability in the entire country. Now, just to brush it aside and say, "Arey, climate change hai, this is happening and this is happening because of the nature's fury," this is criminal. This is really criminal. I just have two, before I begin, I just wanted to share with you just 2 slides. It's just 2 small videos. Is it visible?
It is visible, but it's not on a slideshow mode.
Because of the issues here. Okay, let me just play it here because I have another tab. I mean, if you look at this video of how the flood came in and how these laborers This is the video of Tapovan Vishnugad, which is actually like literally hit me to my very soul. This is criminal negligence because when the water came at Rishi Ganga, there was at least 10 to 15 minutes and people could have warned, these laborers could have been warned at Dhauli Ganga at the Tapovan Vishnugad barrage to run. Not only there are not even these basic disaster warning systems, but there is actually not even the basic aspect of even a phone call saying, boss, there is a flood here. Can you please ask your laborers to run away? This is the criminal accountability that we must question. No matter whatever that we dissect in terms of the Uttarakhand tragedy and as to what happened with the aspect of climate change, we can go on and on about that. But this is not development at any standard whatsoever. Now, this was the first thing that I wanted to begin with. The second thing that I wanted to talk about for the people who have generally been associated with different concepts of environment and everything is about this EIA thing. सबको लगता है कि अगर environment impact assessment हो गया है तो environment impact assessment सब कुछ cover कर रहा है. आप मुझे बताइए कि अगर आज ही की आप एक tragedy ले लीजिए, सभी ने आपको बताया कि पहले ऋषि गंगा हाइड्रो पावर प्रोजेक्ट उड़ा, उसके बाद नीचे पानी आया और तपोवन विष्णुगाड उड़ा. अब आप मुझे बताइएगा अगर एक एनवायरमेंट इम्पैक्ट असेसमेंट है और सिर्फ तपोवन विष्णुगाड को क्लियरेंस दे रहा है और वो बाकी कुछ भी कंसिडर नहीं कर रहा है. It is not considering what is going upstream of Tapovan Vishnugad. It is not considering what is going downstream of Tapovan Vishnugad. It is not considering the other activities that are happening in the area, which is basically road चौड़ीकरण हो रहा है, आपका tourism inflow बढ़ रहा है, आपके बुग्यालों को शादी के मैदानों में कन्वर्ट किया जा रहा है. It just goes on and on and on. Then where is the aspect of environment impact assessment? You are not even seeing the environment. You are like one horse which is covered its eyes and it's only seeing one project. That one project is not working in isolation. That one project space is sharing the space with so many other infrastructure activities in the area. There has to be a strategic assessment. That is also something which is just to explain scientifically as to why this environment impact assessment is the complete sham. But the idea is that why are we building these dams? I will just show you this another clip which is very interesting because this is 2013 post-disaster speech.
Malika, there's almost no sound.
Sound nahi hai, yeah.
सर वीडियो में साउंड नहीं आता है सर. There's a problem with the system.
Okay, yeah, but Malika can continue, yeah.
So in Sushma Swaraj in 2013, after the disaster, gave a full blast speech in Lok Sabha saying that there should not even be a single dam on the Ganga. These are the areas which should be left sacrosanct because these are culturally sensitive areas. Now, this is the same party. It comes back in 2018. It sits with different ministries, with different groups and discusses about the hydropower policy in the Ganga Himalayan basin and decides that we are not going to build any more dams on the Ganga. This is the same party which gives an affidavit in 2014 and accepts Ravi Chopra report saying कि पैरा ग्लेशियर बफर जोन्स में हमको कोई भी बांध नहीं बनाना चाहिए, कल को कोई भी त्रासदी आ सकती है। कहाँ पर है इनका कमिटमेंट? 2018 में इन्होंने कहा कि हम कोई बांध नहीं बनाएंगे, और 2018 से लेकर आज 2021 हो गया है। उत्तराखंड गवर्नमेंट इज बेंट अपॉन बिल्डिंग मोर एंड मोर डैम्स। Where are we going to go? Where are the people going to go? कितने सारे और इवेंट होंगे? How many people are supposed to die? This is a question of you have to set accountability. This is something which is happening illegally and it is being done time and again. Char Dham Pariyojana mein again a very honest chairman, a very honest set of members. Naveen ji is also here. They have submitted a report. They have said and they have brought about the illegality of the road widening in Uttarakhand. They have brought about the fact that you were supposed to make a road 5.5 meter wide and you went ahead and you're making a road 12 meter wide. And these are the people who have to face so much of ridicule for no reason. I mean, Nitin Gadkari ji is just going on. He just went live on 11th of February. Just 2 days after this disaster has happened, our cabinet minister went live on in the parliament and is saying कि हमें तो सड़क बहुत चौड़ी करनी है और भी चौड़ी करेंगे, सुप्रीम कोर्ट की कृपा रही तो ये हो जाएगा. There is just no accountability. The government is doing things illegally one after the other, and people's lives are being paid as a price. So we have to set accountability. I sure the people who are connected to this particular forum, no matter whatever scientific discussion we come up with, at the end of the day, what are we going to do with this information actually amounts to the most. Here we are sitting, all of us, we should collect together. I was listening to what Manshi ji was also saying, and this is a scenario which is happening all over Himalayas. We already have a report saying that the water sources are dying in Himalayas. Then why can't we just come together and actually build a Himalayan policy? We should file petitions in the court or whatever is needed. But we need to set a mark right now, just that this disaster should not recur again. I mean, climate change is a global reality. We are facing it this is frequency, and the intensity of this disaster is only going to increase. Now, the only thing that we can do is preserve and conserve these areas. That's all that I would want to say. I would just want to say one more thing, that whenever we are trying to understand the aspect of disaster, please, the same thing that I was talking about EIA, आप एक event isolated नहीं देख सकते हैं. Similarly, you cannot look at a disaster in an isolated way. It is not just that the glacier melt and this burst happened. No, there were forest fires that were happening since the month of October. There is considerable increase in the temperature of the temperature of the atmosphere. There are microclimatic changes that are happening season. बहुत वक्त से चल रहा है. And all of this have accumulated together to cause such a tragedy in the winter season. So we have to understand that we have already crossed the threshold limit and make amends immediately.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Maldika, and for bringing out some of these human dimensions of the tragedy, and also the basic things like, whole disaster management plan, early warnings, which could have saved, lives and people's belongings and houses, and, broadly the whole thing. And also picking on the issue of EIA, need to go beyond EIA to either what we call about cumulative impact assessment or what you called, strategic impact assessments and things to be done. And I'm sure our next speaker, Himanshu, also would throw some light on some of these issues. So thank you very much, Mallika. We'll take this conversation forward. We have the next speaker now, that is Himanshu Thakkar. He's by training an engineer, trained in IIT Mumbai. And I think we all know him as the coordinator of the South Asia Network on Dams, Rivers and People, SANDRIP. And I think especially on dams and these issues, he has been writing, and especially through the newsletter and various other type of things of SANDRIP, informing all of us about these type of issues, which is happening. And he has been a person with the last more than 30 years of engagement with the water sector, broadly water sector issues in the country as well as globally. Himanshu, it's your time.
Thank you. Actually, I think we are close to the closing time of the meeting. So I will not take my allotted time. I'll just make a couple of quick comments. Yeah. See, one thing that strikes you in this tragedy is that there was no monitoring happening of this. This is a known area, area which is prone to disasters, landslides, rockfalls, avalanches, etc. But no monitoring was happening, the glacial lakes and so on. So that's the first thing that strikes you. The second thing that strikes you is that several days after the disaster, everybody was talking different things. Somebody said glacial फट गया, किसी ने बोला cloud burst हो गया, किसी ने बोला avalanche हो गया. And even then, they were all talking in generalities. So, and very strangely, we are talking about drones and helicopter survey and so on, but no such survey reports are out. Whether such a thing has happened or not, we don't know. It's only, as Naveen Jayal said, it's Mr. Naresh Rana, Professor Naresh Rana visited on 10th of February. After that, we come to know about the landslide dam. Even ISRO, which brought out the satellite imageries on 10th of February, did not come out with existence of this satellite dam. So it's a very strange situation. And what is this? The satellite imagery monitoring could have actually helped predict this kind of thing. The second thing is, what Malika said is very important, that once the event is known to happen, it has started, then why was the Tapovan project not alerted and disaster management not done there? So there's really a question of accountability, which was there in 2013. Again, we have not learned lesson. So the second thing I want to highlight quickly is that, see, once the disaster may have started because of some climatic reasons, climate change reasons, and some natural reasons, but once it entered Raini village, then how it panned out is and how the disaster potential and disaster actually played out is dependent on what we have been doing in that area. And what we can see through is that hydropower projects and such major interventions are acting as force multipliers in multiplying the disaster potential of the disaster. So, and we can explain that in many different ways, but I think I'll not go into those details. The third thing I want to say is that, what Malika said about accountability is very important, and we have been talking so long. But the problem is there is no accountability. I mean, we don't know how we are going to go forward. What is the roadmap for it? For example, will the people who made the EIA for the Tapovan Vishnugad, ignoring all this, will they be made accountable? Will the expert appraisal committee, which cleared the Tapovan project without taking into all these factors into account, will they be held accountable? Will the Ministry of Environment officials and the minister, during which time this project was given clearance, will they be held accountable? Will the people who prepared the feasibility report of the project, this project was supposed to be completed in 2012, and today we don't know. And the cost of the electricity even normally would be for 6-7 rupees, and now it will be possibly so much more. Who is going to pay for that? So I think accountability is very important, but where is the roadmap for it? And the last point I want to mention is that in the context of climate change, we are talking about climate change, but the point is that what does climate change tells us to do? So what it tells us is that we need to be careful about what we are doing, our interventions, our projects. Are we taking care of it? We need to be monitoring the risky areas and the disaster prone areas. Are we doing that? Are we identifying the vulnerable areas and ensuring that there is a disaster management system in place to ensure that disaster doesn't happen? So that's not happening. And one more thing I want to just end with saying that, see, even in this disaster, what comes out is that the government doesn't want to share even information about the disaster with the people. So for example, on 8th of February, the ISRO provides maps to the chief minister, but that's not in public domain. On 10th of February, ISRO provides a report to the chief minister. That's not in public domain. On 9th of February, there is a helicopter survey, which would have definitely told them about the existence of the landslide dam. That's not in public domain. So even the disaster related information the government refuses to put in public domain. Now, this government, what is it we are going to expect in terms of transparency, participation, and accountability? It's very bleak situation, but we need to find our way forward through this. Thank you.
Thanks, Himanshu, and also saving some time. I know we are running out of time, and I think you reinforced the whole question of accountability of different processes and phases and actors who have been involved in right from clearance to various other type of things. And also the whole question of a much more transparent information sharing system, as you rightly pointed out. We had different versions coming out. Even nobody even knew that such a water body or the lake had been formed and things. So the whole question of bringing in more accountability and transparency in terms of information sharing is an important. I think that's important elements when we talk about how do we go to move forward and hold these people accountable for these actions.
And just one more thing, one sentence I want to add. See, the Central Water Commission, which is supposed to be the technical body, which is supposed to do flood forecasting, it was completely absent when this flood was playing out. There was no flood forecasting happening. Even once it started, that what is going to play it out downstream. It's only at 7 o'clock on the evening of 7th February, after we tweeted in the afternoon that very Central Water Commission flood forecasting, that they came into the picture and started giving hydrographs. So this is our Central Water Commission.
Yeah. Thanks for adding that, Himanshu. So we'll quickly shift to our last speaker. That is Ravi Chopra ji. I think Ravi Chopra has been mentioned time and again by other speakers. So I won't take much time to introduce. I think Ravi Chopra is also quite known to all of us. His whole work in the Himalayan terrain is quite known. He has been part of various committees. He has been one of the founding director of the prestigious institution, People Science Institute in Dehradun. So without taking too much of time, I will hand it over to Ravi ji for his last concluding presentation. Ravi, yeah.
Thank you, Joy. I'll try and touch upon a lot of important things that have been said in this webinar. Sabse pehle to let us understand that two events took place on the 7th. There will be a lot of confusion spread pretty soon, where you will hear a lot of people saying, "Bhai, kya karte?" It was an act of God. It was a natural phenomenon. वहां तो ग्लेशियर टूटते ही हैं. But let us be clear that there was a natural event. A mass of ice, snow, and sediments came down a steep slope, and it fell into the river. Rishi Ganga created a flood. यहाँ तक वो natural event था. उसके बाद जो flood जब चलता है उस नदी में, तो जहां भी उसको रुकावट मिलेगी, जैसे नवीन ने समझाया, Naveen explained to us that when you have this mass flowing in a paraglacial zone, and I'll explain what's a paraglacial zone in a minute, then it has a lot of power. The power is so much that if any barrier comes in the way, it will just destroy that barrier and move further ahead with even more energy. As it moves with more energy, it picks up more sediments from the bed of the river and continues to move in a destructive manner, destroying every single barrier on the way until this bed slope of the river decreases, and that's where it begins to lose its power. So there is a natural event, which is, we can ascribe it to nature. There is a disaster, which is clearly because we put the obstructions in the path of the river. So you please separate these two things. Now, I referred to the, some people referred to the committee that I had chaired in 2013, and we were asked 3 questions. The first one was, did the construction of dams in Uttarakhand cause environmental degradation? Don't tell us what is happening in the rest of the world, just tell us about Uttarakhand. Our answer was yes. We produced a lot of evidence gathered from field trips, gathered from scientific literature, government reports, and local people. It was clearly established. Second question, did the flood, did the dams aggravate the impact of the disaster? We investigated 4 particular sites, and at each one we were able to establish that yes, the existence of dams aggravated the disaster. The most important example is Srinagar, where so much sand and silt came, which had been dumped by the developer just downstream of the dam on one side. All of it got washed away into the town of Srinagar, and people's homes got filled with sand. They had no place to go. And I remember Bimal Bhai organized the local people, and they filed a case in NGT. NGT ordered a compensation of, I think, 93 million or 9.3 crore rupees, something of that sort. The third question was, the World Wildlife Institute of India has recommended 24 dams to be cancelled. Please review this and tell us what should be done. We came to the conclusion that 23 out of the 24 should be cancelled right away. The 24th, if it is to be built, has to be built with severe modifications. And we had to agree to that only because of a blackmail issue. Now, the most important finding, however, of this committee was the idea of the paraglacial zone, which was taught to us by Naveen Juyar. He explained to us that the region above approximately 2000 meters in the Uttarakhand Himalaya is a paraglacial zone. These are zones from where glaciers have receded in the past, leaving behind a lot of debris and moraine. And in the event of heavy rainfall or a flood, the water and the ice, snow mobilizes all this sediment, and as I explained before, moves downstream with great stream power. So our recommendation was that no dams should be built in the paraglacial zone. Now, the two dams that have been destroyed this time are both in a paraglacial zone. So clearly, no governments, neither the state nor the central government, heeded any of our warnings. And so we can say that this was a disaster waiting to happen, and there are going to be many more of this sort if some of the warnings of the climatologists come true. There has been one unfortunate aspect of this disaster, which is that somehow the media got hooked on, ye kaise hua? Was it a glough? Was it a hanging glacier that fell off? Was it an avalanche? What was it? Arey bhai, jo bhi ho, it may have been something came, a mass of ice, sediments and so on came down the slope, and it killed. We know it killed 36 people, unke to shab mil gaye hain, but there are about 200 more people who got killed. And unfortunately, the media and nobody is reporting कि इनके परिवारों पे क्या बीत रही है आज. What is happening to their families? For many of them, I have a feeling that for most of them, the people who have died or who've been washed away are probably the sole breadwinners of those families. And, you know, the government grandly announces, हम 4 लाख रुपया दे देंगे compensation, center announces 10 लाख रुपया दे देंगे. अरे भाई, कोई सांत्वना देने गया उनके घर? So the human element is missing more and more. There is an issue that I may have a tiny bit of good news to remind you about. And that is that, to my understanding, basically the era of dams is over. Why do I say that? Because of what Joyce said. I think Joyce said it or Himanshu said at the end, that hydropower is costing, I think Himanshu said it, is costing us at a very minimum 6 to 8 rupees a unit to produce. I think for the smaller dams, the cost is as much as 10 rupees a unit. But solar is today available at a production price of about 2.5 rupees to 2 rupees a unit. Pretty soon we are going to find out nobody wants to buy this hydropower. Himachal Pradesh has already faced this crisis some time ago when it could not sell its power. So this is where we need to focus on कि भाई this bijli is too costly to produce and we should not be producing it. The warnings of the climatologists, they're very clear. Professor McPherson at the Arizona State University, he has repeatedly warned us that his analysis, mathematical modeling, of course, God knows what his assumptions are, show a much more rapid increase in global warming in this decade than has been predicted so far. And once that happens, then all this glacier melting and Glough and hanging glaciers, they become a problem. By the way, there was some concern कि कुछ होता क्या है. You know, the government makes a lot of heroic statements after a disaster like this. अभी 2013 के बाद ये बात हुई कि एक सेंटर फॉर ग्लेशियोलॉजी बनेगा. इसकी बात तो 2008 में हुई थी according to Naveen, and a blueprint was prepared for a center for glacial studies, but it got cancelled some time ago. The National Institute of Glaciology was also announced. That has been cancelled. There is a state action plan for climate change. जिस ऑफिसर ने वो बनाया उस बेचारे की तो खिल्ली उड़ाई जाती है हमारे स्टेट में. And somebody was ridiculing him in front of me one day, and I said, sir, आपने उनका action plan पढ़ लिया है? He stopped for a moment, smiled and said, नहीं पढ़ा तो नहीं है. But he was happily ridiculing the guy. So the basic elements, Mallika's point, the basic elements, EIA reports are almost fuzzy documents. They are cut and paste jobs. I have read a few EIA reports. I have lost count. 8-10 तो आराम से पढ़ी थी. And I could tell you which paragraphs are lifted from where. Then there is supposed to be a disaster management plan in the EIA report. अगर disaster management plan होता है, तो क्या आप जहां पे हमने देखा कि वो बेचारे श्रमिक जो थे, लेबरर्स जो थे, वो टंगे गए उस डैम के ऊपर, अगर सीढ़ी दी होती तो वो खुद ही भाग आते नीचे. The poor fellows were left wondering कि हम नीचे कैसे उतरें. So there was not even the basic सीढ़ी provided over there. And then finally, the point of Himanshu has emphasized and Vimal Bhai has emphasized, you know, the issue of accountability. We have to demand personal accountability. We have to demand personal accountability of all those involved in the decision making. Unless we do this, and I know what will happen when we go to the courts are going to tell us कि भाई इसके लिए तो जो कानून है, it allows me to give a fine of only 5 lakh rupees. उससे ज्यादा तो मैं फाइन ही नहीं कर सकता हूँ, लॉ ही नहीं है. तो फिर we need to get that kind of a law, which of course these people will not make, but that's what we need, because the courts are also going to say that our hands are strapped, we can't do much more than this. Personal accountability जब तक नहीं आएगी, तब तक मुझे नहीं लगता है कि कुछ भी रिस्पांस सही ढंग से होगा. Last, somebody asked me a few days ago कि होता तो कुछ नहीं. In the larger frame of things, probably right, कि बहुत कुछ नहीं होता है. But पार्टी वो हमारा छोटा सा एक दोष है कि we don't celebrate our small victories. We've had a few small victories. We need to use them to build hope amongst people कि नहीं, अगर आप कोशिश करोगे तो बदलेंगी चीजें. वो आपको बूट पॉलिश का गाना याद कीजिए जिसमें लिखा हुआ है बदलेगा जमाना, ये सितारों में लिखा है. And we have to find out कि are we part of the problem or are we part of the solution? If you are not a part of the solution, if you are not fighting for solution, then you are part of the problem. And let me just tell you कि पिछले कुछ दिनों में what are the small victories that the protesters have won? I'll finish it in a minute.
Yeah, Ravi. Yes.
एक तो देखिए 10 dams in the Bhagirathi basin finally got cancelled after a lot of effort in 2018. 3 big dams had already been cancelled in the Bhagirathi basin. The issue of environmental flows, Professor Brij Gopal started talking about it more than 15 years ago. And it was only after 2018, in 2018, that some niggling concessions have been made in the name of environmental flows. Now we have to keep up this pressure कि भाई हमें ये आपका भीख, आप जो हमें 2 पैसे फेंक रहे हो, हमें ये नहीं चाहिए, हमें पूरी आपकी तिजोरी चाहिए. We want our rivers to flow unhindered. And you can see the impact of this, as I think it was Manshi who said that the entrepreneurs don't want to build the dams now. And it's true. In our state also, the small and medium entrepreneurs have more or less withdrawn from building the smaller projects. It's only the big companies and the government that is left in the fray. और सरकार के पास तो आप जानते हो इतना पैसा है नहीं, वो बोलती रहती है. अब कितने सालों से मैं सुन रहा हूँ कि लखवाड़ व्यासी शुरू हो गया, शुरू होने वाला है, अभी शुरू हो जाएगा. बट लखवाड़ व्यासी तो अब बात हो रही है कि शुरू कर रहे हैं. So please recognize your own victories. That gives us hope, and let us move forward. As one thing that has come out of this whole thing is we need to create a strategy for moving ahead. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Ravi. And I think you have been able to engage with many of the issues which other speakers did raise. And your simple point that if some of your very basic recommendations for your committee had been taken on board, then probably some of these things could have been avoided. And also you ended with a very hopeful note that we need to celebrate smaller victories and our struggles. And the hope that hydropower has no future, even economically speaking, probably if it plays out, then some of these tragedies can be avoided, and we need to work towards some of this. Now we have, I think we will definitely wind it up by 6. Sorry, I've not been able to do what a good taskmaster in terms of keeping time, but the presentation was so interesting. My heart was breaking when I was trying to stop people and things. It was so interesting. And I mean, even a learning experience and things. So without too much, then I would request my colleague and friend Janagarajan to take over and have some of the very basic questions, if anybody has, to the speakers, or any suggestions how to move forward. We can spend about 10 minutes on that. So Janak, please.
Yeah, thank you, Joy. I think you are right. We have had the opportunity of listening to these 7 wonderful speakers. It was actually a revelation to understand what happened in Uttarakhand. I am not going to do the summary of all the presentations, but basically to get into the observations and questions raised by the participants. I think the one question to Naveen was the magnification of the disaster by the under construction Tapovan Vishnu God project under construction. How was there a reverse flow of flood at Tapovan barrage is one thing which the participant was interested to know. So Naveen, would you like to take a minute or so to?
Yeah. Let me tell you that I think the headrest tunnel, which was there at the Tapovan, naturally, when the flood water came and obstructed by the barrage, the sediment load was so enormous that it acted as sluice gate. It could not really allow it to really go fast. So it's real backward. This happened as Dr. Ravi Chopra said about the Srinagar town when it got destroyed by GBK project. When they released the water, the muck which was kept at the bank of the river went along with the water. But then as the river exit from the Srinagar, the river width is narrow, it got section. There it got impounded and revealed backward. So
Yeah.
exactly happened in this particular place. Of course that was the amount of muck was not there that much, but the sediment which came from along with the river and some machines were crusher and other things were there that entered into the left side tunnel. That's how it happened.
Yeah, thank you. There was also mention about the hanging glacier, and one would like to know, is it a usual or unusual phenomenon, or to know how strong or weak is this as this got washed away?
Yeah, it's a question to me.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
No,
Okay.
There was a mention about the hanging glacier by somebody. I forgot.
That is, I think, Uttam Lal.
Yeah.
Uttam Lal. Yes, Uttam Lal. Yeah.
Is Uttam around?
Well, hanging glaciers, yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Look, hanging glaciers are quite normal, part of a glacier where initially when the glaciers are larger, and as glacier recedes, some part of the glacier remains stranded, and it's once we see from valley down, we see that glaciers are. It appears as if it is hanging. So I mean, it's a very normal thing in glaciated valley, and no hanging glaciers one can say that it's a stable part. The only thing is its time frame. Some of the glaciers would be remain stranded, hanging for decades, maybe 50 years, 60 years. But glaciers would be, unless until we are in a regime where there is a positive mass balance, these glaciers would be at certain point in time, either it would cave in or it would slowly melt away. So that's why in the beginning I said that what happened in Uttarakhand, it's not one-off thing. It is going to happen. It has happened earlier also. The only part is the only difference is in some of the valleys, disaster is not there in terms of human suffering. So it does not gather much eyeball.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Janak, can I just intervene for a moment?
Sure, please.
From a back of the envelope calculation I did, the size of this hanging glacier that has fallen is approximately 1.5 kilometers by 900 or 800 meters. So it's almost 1 square kilometer.
Oh my goodness. Oh, what an information. Thanks, Chopra ji. I think
Sarang had something to say. He just sent me a message. Sarang Edwardkar. Can you just call out to him?
Yeah. Can you hear me, Joy?
Yeah, just very brief, Sarang.
Yeah. I just want few seconds. This is not exactly related to Uttarakhand, but a very similar thing. In Pune, in Pimpri-Chinchwad area, there is a town planning scheme proposed by the municipal corporation, and a huge area of that town planning scheme falls on the floodplains of the river. And can I share my screen?
Yeah, but don't take too much of time because we are just.
I think we don't have here, but the fag end of the session.
Yeah, just say it. I would say.
See, this is the river. This is the blue line of the river. These are the floodplains. And on these floodplains, economical weaker section housing and all those residential projects are proposed. And do you know who is the architect of this town planning scheme? To my surprise, it is Bimal Patel of HCP Design Planning and Management Private Limited, who is the designer of Central Vista. We need to be aware of this. That's what I wanted to present before you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. I have actually one question to ask Ravi Chopra. In fact, Manshi mentioned there are about 27 dams in Himachal Pradesh, out of which 10 are in red zone. I am just wondering, and this is obviously in the vulnerable zone, has there been any risk analysis or the impact analysis carried out with you to understand what is going to be the kind of a impact that the region would face in case there is a burst of the flood or the breakage or breakdown of the dams and so on, without really undertaking that kind of an analysis. How is that it is allowed legally and technically? It's not correct, isn't it? It's unfair.
Actually, Naveen would be a better person to answer to this, but this was the kind of reasoning that was pushed, and we got these 4 cumulative impact assessment reports, but they are in the river valley. They're not spread across, let's say, the main central thrust, which is the most sensitive, seismically most sensitive region. Now, if we have a great earthquake, which is expected in a region like Uttarakhand, God knows how many of these projects will go.
Janak, I think Shashi Shekharji, who was the former Secretary of Water Resources, I think he want to intervene in the discussion.
Oh yes, sure.
Shashiji?
Yeah, just 2 things.
Yeah, Shashiji.
One, am I audible?
Yes, please.
Yeah, just 2 things. No, post Ravi Chopra's committee and filing of an affidavit by the Ministry of Environment and Forest, Supreme Court not taking cognizance of the technical details provided in the Ravi Chopra committee. I would very agree with Mr. Vimal Bhai that it is a criminal negligence on the part of Supreme Court. We have today no legal mechanism where we can hold Supreme Court accountable, but somebody must raise this, that you have been discussing this time and again, despite the fact that an expert committee and time and again people have given such reports that Himalaya is the newest mountain, unconsolidated, very, very prone to landslide, and thereafter you are blasting, tunneling. Obviously, this was waiting to happen, and it's not one time. 2005, 2018, we have been getting series of it. Should Supreme Court not be held accountable by the people of this country? After all, they're meant for this. We need to raise, because only then the highest body will start thinking. Otherwise, we have like Sarkari sadhus, we have Sarkari experts who give all kinds of opinion, and today I find that people are giving that it is due to climate change. If we agree to climate change argument and if we allow this to gain traction, we are actually allowing the main problem of dam and the dam related, so-called development related activity being the main cause of such disasters in Uttarakhand and perhaps tomorrow Himachal as well. We'll be allowing such argument to be shoved inside, under the carpet. We should not allow. And how do we? That's what at the end when Ravi Chopra ji said that we need to develop an action. We need to develop a strategy and action, and we must join together to do that. In fact, 2016 again we filed another affidavit. That time it was from the Ministry of Nau Jal Shakti. That time it was River Rejuvenation and Ganga and the Ministry of Water Resources. Again, it brought out the same issues. We had opposed projects on Dhauli Ganga. Tapovan we had opposed, and still it was allowed. So somebody has to be held accountable, and without accountability, like the government of Uttarakhand, the DMs, the so-called the experts who opposed a good report, should be held. Minister of Environment and Forest, this must be held accountable. Who will be? If we keep allowing such reports to gain traction, then the main facts and main issues will be shoved under the carpet, and we should not allow this.
Okay.
Here, debating will not help.
Thank you, Shashi Shekhar, and I think that's a wonderful summary. And there's in fact was called hiding behind climate change for all anthropogenic interventions. And we continue to hide behind climate change, and then continue to do all human-induced activities, and the people continue to suffer. I think that's a wonderful session we have had, and there are no big questions otherwise, because a good listening to all the wonderful speakers. So Joy, it's over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Janak. And I think we need to, if there was time, we would have given at least a minute each to all the speakers, but I think we'll run out of time. But I think this is an ongoing dialogue. We should take it from that spirit. And I think the organizers of this program would get together and see how to take this whole thing forward. And I that much more collectivity is required. Otherwise, reports go, but tragedies do take place. One of the key messages, I think, that how do we keep all these actors accountable for the decision they have taken, which seem to have led to this type of tragedy. So I think, for example, the concerned academics and the civil society and probably media, we need to form our own larger collectives on these issues, and we should not allow these things to again get repeated and things. So I think probably the 5-6 organizations who try to organize this meeting would try to think over this and get back to with some suggestive forwards or actions which we can all take. So one of the things which we are trying to put together is to come out with a shared statement by not only by the organizers, but also everybody who has been part of this session today. And also we will have a bit of a larger signature campaign. And I would suggest my colleague Neha to put up that statement. I mean, we are not going to discuss it now. There should be a link provided. Please go through that statement and come back to us with your suggestions and type of this so that we make a broader inclusive statement on this and how to move forward in the this. Yeah. So there's a statement, and I think Neha can also put up the link to this so that everybody can access this. And in maybe about 2 days time, if you all of you can get back to us, there are 2 email addresses which is mentioned.
I'll quickly paste that in the chat box so people can actually save that. So
we can get this statement out quickly in the next 3-4 days. It will be good, and we should, that will be one forum we can all get together. Please do give us suggestions to make it more, sharper and things. And also for some of the long-term, short-term activities, we will get back to you with some suggestions, and then we can see how we can take this forward. So we don't stop with just merely having a debate or a discussion, but let's see what we can all together. I also take this opportunity.
Wants to say something.
Yeah, who?
Shashi Shekhar wants to say something.
Is it Shashi ji? You have something to say?
No. By mistake it was.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Your hand is still.
Take this opportunity to thank all the 7 speakers. I think it's been wonderful listening to all of you, brought out the different dimensions of the whole tragedy and the problems which we are facing. The recording of the session, the full thing is done there, and we will separate the link to everybody. So you can have a look at it, get back with your comments and suggestions. I also thank all of you to be part of this and had a very good attendance. And I'm extremely sorry that we little overrun the time, and sometimes this happened in some of these sessions. Also, thank Manoj Mishra ji, who in fact he has been from India River Forum as well as from Water Conflict Forum. He is the one mainly held this together in terms of preparing the first draft of the statement, as well as talking to the various speakers and trying to help us to organize this. I'm also thankful to my colleague Neha Bakure for anchoring the whole team logistically. Similarly, Siddharth Agarwal of India younger colleagues in the India Youth Water Network. So thank you very much, and we will be in touch with all of you how to take this forward. And please do get back with your comments and suggestions about the statement which we would like to issue as a statement from all of us on this, and maybe mobilize larger opinion in the country around this issue. So thank you very much, and with this we close the program.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. Amita is there.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, Neha.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Tanu, Anuj,
Thanks,
yeah.
Neha. Thanks, Divya. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Ravi Jai. Thank you, Jai.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Hi.